The Oxford Dictionary picked selfie as the word of the year, but over at Merriam-Webster, it's not all about you. Based on a number of searches online, they chose science as the word of the year. To us, that means 2013 was jammed with big science stories. So guess who's here? Bob McDonald, the national science correspondent. Bob, now we're not ranking these in any particular order.
No, we're not. I'm so delighted science is the word of the year. And what I've chosen are 10 really interesting stories that caught my eye this year, but I'm not saying this is more important than another one. All science stories to me are really important, whether it's huge, big stuff or little tiny things, it's all important. So these are the 10 that caught my eye.
And we're going to start with the rock that clobbered Russia.
Yes, indeed. It came down over Chelyabinsk in northern Russia, and thanks to the dash cams on the cars in Russia, it was recorded on video in a number of different locations. And afterwards, the scientists were able to put together the actual position and speed and size of this thing, and Canada was involved in this, and they found out that that asteroid that came in was about the size of a 10-story building. And it came in and put out a lot more energy than they expected, because in the past when they were trying to calculate, well, how much energy would you get from an explosion of an asteroid hitting the Earth of that size, they used nuclear explosions as models, but that comes from a point. This one, when it comes in through the atmosphere, it covers a lot of area, so the shock that it produces is actually in the shape of a tube, and it goes out and covers a lot more ground and covers more damage. So we had to rethink how much these things from space are actually causing when they hit our planet, which happens all the time and usually by surprise.
Did they find the thing?
Yes, they did. They found pieces of it in a lake, and it's a stony type of asteroid called the chondrite.
Okay.
Interesting things, yes.
Next one, number 2, has been on your list before.
Yes, it has, and it's been on the country's list for a long time, climate change. We saw the United Nations get together again in Warsaw this year to talk about what the world is going to do to reduce carbon emissions. And at the same time, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change came out with another report talking about the mechanisms for climate change and the fact that we are, in fact, having an effect on it. So let's get over debating about whether or not we're having an effect. Let's get on with doing something about it and really reducing our emissions. And they're trying to come up with new targets for 2015. Sadly, Canada's not doing that. We're not meeting the targets that have already been set by our government. Our emissions continue to rise, so we still have a long way to go to get those emissions down. But climate change is real, and we're going to have to start to adapt to a warmer planet.
And we have these epic storms, Superstorm Sandy, I think about particularly, but people seem to talk about climate change and these giant storms all in one sentence.
Right, and that brings us to our next topic, which is the typhoon that hit the Philippines. Now, you can't say that any one storm is due to climate change because that's weather, and weather is what happens every day. Climate is over a long period of time. But when I look at the damage that was done by this, it was really unfortunate that the typhoon happened to go right over the Philippine Islands, and it was a very strong storm, and the climate models predict that we won't have more storms, but the ones we do will be stronger. And it's the island countries that will suffer the most because they're right down at sea level, plus the buildings that people live in tend to be more flimsy and they're more damaged by storms and earthquakes, which also hit the Philippines this year. They had a double whammy. So I think it's a reminder that a lot of people are going to be affected by this. We're pretty lucky in Canada. We live in a northern region, and we're not as affected as much by storms like that. But there are parts of the world that are suffering, and they're the ones that are lobbying to let's get on with doing something about climate change.
I was in the Philippines, and just seeing where the tidal surge had come in, and people were fleeing up to the roofs of buildings, and then those who weren't up high enough getting sucked back out in the ocean.
That's correct. And in the long term, for climate change, as ice melts, the sea levels are going to rise. So you're going to have flooding even without the storm. So it's it is a serious issue we need to deal with.
Right. The next one we're going to talk about is also connected to weather, and it is space weather. Right?
Yes, indeed. Our Canadian satellites. People don't realize, but Canada puts satellites up into space too. 3 of them go up. This one is called Cassiope, and as you say, it looks at space weather. It looks at our ionosphere, which is the very top of the Earth's atmosphere. Canada has a long history in that. Our very first satellites looked at exactly that. Alouette 1, our first satellite, looked at it. And there were 2 others that went up, and one that caught my eye is called NEOSat, and it is designed to look out for the very kinds of asteroids that came down in Russia. That thing that came as a total surprise. Nobody saw it coming. There are a lot of them out there, and we don't know where they are. And the Canadian satellite is searching for them close to our orbit around the sun. So Canada may be the early warning system for these things coming our way.
Does that satellite just search for the ones that are going to perhaps strike Canada, or anything anywhere?
Well, you can hit the Earth anywhere. I mean, the Earth is a spinning object, and you can hit any side of it. The chances are it'll come down in the ocean, but we don't know. The thing is, you got to see them coming first before you can do that.
Talk about things to watch out for. The giant snowball.
Yes, the was supposed to be the comet of the century, but didn't quite make it. Comet Ison was seen for more than a year before it finally got here, and here we see it coming in towards the sun, and a lot of people thought that it would survive its trip around the sun. This was its first trip in from deep space, and it was not planning to come back. It was supposed to go around the far side of the sun and then continue on back out into deep space. And everyone thought that after it went around the sun, it would be even brighter, and we would see it in the morning sky, even right over through Christmas. It would have been like a star in the east. Hey, how about that? But unfortunately, when it went around the sun, the temperature of the sun, the surface of this snowball got to 2,000 degrees. It was literally a snowball in hell, and that took it apart. And so it survived for a little bit afterwards. There was a little bit of dust that came out the other side, but then it was gone, so it's been blown away on the solar wind. Too bad. Would have been a good show. But there's always another one coming. We don't know when, but there will be more comets in the future.
Now, this is television. This is video. Any top 10 list at the end of the year is supposed to have puppy dogs and kitty cats. You only have one animal.
Yeah, I get the seals. Well, they're kind of cute. With their big eyes, big puppy eyes. This was a funny story that just came by this year that I heard on Quirks. Seals can sleep with half their brain. Now, if you think about it, an animal that spends a lot of time out on the water, they're going to get tired every once in a while, but they're not near the shore. They can't climb up on rocks or on the ice like this. They want to sleep. So what they can do, they don't want to get eaten while they're asleep by killer whales or things, so they can roll over on their side, keep one eye up and keep it open while the other side of their brain sleeps. And then when that's rested, they roll over and put the other eye up and let the other half of their brain sleep. So they can sleep one half at a time, but one half is always open and awake all the time, so they're alert.
You mean they physically flip from one side to the other to turn off one side of the brain?
Turn off one side of the brain and get the other one going. And we found that whales can do the same thing. They can sleep with just one eye up and one eye back. And it's sort of the life at sea. When you're animals at sea all the time, you can't really sleep full-time because somebody could come along and eat you. You just don't want that to happen. So it's a very clever adaptation. We can't quite do that, although I know some people who do.
Now, humans don't tend to have the problem of getting eaten by killer whales, but can you teach me to do it when I'm on a plane so that I can sleep in that steerage seat?
It'd be a very handy thing to have. You can watch the movie and sleep at the same time.
Can humans do this? Can we? No implications for humans?
Not yet. Who knows?
Well, that's too bad. Bob, stay right where you are. We're going to take just a short break. But when we come back, the science story we love, even if we don't understand it.